All right, the recording has started. We're going to trim this part, so don't worry about it. And I'm going to begin the screen share. Good morning and welcome to the first official Hubcast of 2020. I'm Aaron. With me as always is Ranger Dale, and we find ourselves today in my office in Fairbanks, Alaska, ready to give you guys a great show. So the first thing that we'd like to do right now is kind of break down exactly what you're going to see today if you're watching the Hubcast. So first, number one, assignment explanation. As you know, last week you received a new assignment, and our Ranger KJ is going to break that down for us, just so that you know exactly what's going to be expected of you. Second up, we have our student writing forum, where several students are going to come on with their pieces. We're going to interview them and also talk about their writing process, what they were thinking, and how they went about finishing up their assignment. Finally, we're going to finish up with our Story of Us Theory Talk, where Rangers Sarah, Jane, and KJ are going to talk about how we came up with your most recent assignment. So all of that and more, stay tuned. Welcome to the Hubcast one more time, and we hope you enjoy yourselves. If you're looking for a specific segment, all of them should be time-stamped either in the description below or, depending on the site that you're on, somewhere in the comments. Enjoy.
Hi there, everyone. Ranger KJ here. I'm going to break down assignment number 3 real quick for all of you. Let me just share my screen. So assignment number 3 is this flash story of us. There are a couple major components to it. For the first step, we want you to think about your values. There's a list of values if you want some examples of what we mean by values. And we want to think about which ones are important to you. After you do that, we want you to go into the class Google Drive and search for stories that you can relate to. These stories can be stuff that have the same values of you, or they can have different values than yours, whatever direction you want to go with here. But we do want you to read the stories and kind of try to think about what their values are. Then you're going to go to the submission doc and compose the next component. So the submission doc looks like this. The first part is the author's note. We want 400 to 500 words on your values and your story of choice, and then other Hub writers' values and their story of choice. So you're doing a bit of an analysis here. You also want to talk about how these values can work with community, how they can be community formative. And that's the first part right here, the author's note. After that is done, we want you to write the flash story of us. And this is very kind of like free-ended. You can kind of go whatever direction you want. It could be fiction, nonfiction, song, poem, video, whatever. And it's a shorter requirement, 250 to 350 words. And you must make references to the values you mentioned before. All right. That is the main bulk of it. We also do want you to post on the Slack channel and respond to another writer on the Slack channel, the story trail. So just make sure you do that. And that's pretty much everything. All right. I hope that was a helpful explanation.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is right around 1 p.m. in Fairbanks, Alaska. Today's date is Friday, September the 11th. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is a brand new segment, one that is becoming near and dear to my heart, even just as we begin doing it. And we've got some very special guests today, some writers from the community that we really want to share and speak with you today. So we're going to go through, everybody's going to introduce themselves briefly, and then we're going to jump into their pieces that we pulled out. So if y'all could start introducing yourselves, that would be amazing.
All right, I'll start. I'm Cade. I'm a TA for the Hub, and I'm an MFA student, and this is my first semester here in Fairbanks, so looking forward to the winter that's fast approaching.
Awesome. I'm Lindy. I'm a first-year student here at UAF, so I just came too. I'm studying engineering and a writer taking 111X.
I'm Jonathan. I guess I'm a transfer student, really. Did a lot of courses in the military, but I'm getting like generals to my BSN, so that'll be fun.
Great. Well, my name's Jenna. I'm a first year at UAF and currently a student for Writing 111, and my major is civil engineering. And yeah.
Excellent. So it's great to have everybody. And just so that everybody is aware, this is also my first semester here in Fairbanks. So I'm excited to be getting to know everybody here and reading everybody's writing. So with that being said, we are going to jump into our first piece of the day. And this is a piece that the Rangers picked out by Lindy. And before we jump into our breakdown, Lindy, we're very curious as to how you chose the story. You know, we know you had a lot of options, and there's a bunch of things you posted about in the Hub. So why is it that this story kind of stood out to you?
Well, it's interesting. I flew gliders once, and there was a mishap the first time I soloed, and it was a very unnerving moment. And so that kind of like stuck with me. But I realized when I was writing a letter to one of my friends that was there, we were both learning to fly gliders together at the time, that kind of not being totally sure about something, but going for it anyway, and like it almost not working out, but then being okay has kind of been like a theme in all sorts of things I've done in my life. So I thought it was a cool story, and I wanted to like tell that theme with it.
Excellent. All right, that sounds good. So a pretty cool process thinking about jumping into the story, especially as you're writing. Now, as I'm reading through this and I'm looking at it on the screen, there's a couple things that I wanted to point out, but a couple of overarching things to begin with. So something I really liked about your piece as a whole is the amount of detail that you use to describe things that other people might not know about, right? So there's you know, the rope goes taut as the airplane takes off. That was a good detail that I liked. This glider, right? And then you name the glider like a mini airplane without an engine. Immediately I'm picturing this kind of bush plane, right? That you can see in the movies. Startling hail, right? Canopy shrouded in crashing ice. So a lot of these details that you're using really kind of paint the picture of what's going on from where you're at. Now, there's a couple
Definitely. I've kind of verbally told this story to people before, and a lot of times people think I'm like hang gliding initially, so I wanted to make sure that it was clear that it's like an engineless airplane. And, you know, many people have not gone up in gliders, especially during a hailstorm, so I thought that the detail would be very helpful with that.
I definitely can say for myself, I have not done that. All right, so those are just my initial thoughts, but I'd love to turn it over to everybody else in the group right now and hear some of your comments, what you were thinking as you're reading Lindy's piece.
Well, I think the first thing that jumps out is like the creativity of this piece. I think it's really highlighting sort of what we hope this course can be, is that these assignments can be taken in so many different directions, right? And so this is like a very like creative writing based piece that is achieving the same end that, you know, the more traditional personal essay is achieving for other writers. So I think that this is just like a great example of how you can take one of our assignments and turn it into something very original and very different and have it still be as effective.
Definitely. I thought it was very interesting reading like this week's assignment and kind of starting to see like where the story trail is going with like writing your own like personal narrative for the world, because I kind of stumbled upon that process when I was writing tons of scholarship essays over the last year. But it's like, wow, that really is a powerful way to convince people that they should follow you, is going from like, this is my past and this is how I want to intertwine it into a future of the world and a future of us, is fascinating.
I think the other thing to go along with that is when we talk about like specific experiences, it might feel like to us as the writer that we're just talking about this one experience, but then the reader brings in so much more to it and they start pulling out way broader themes and they relate it to their own lives. And that's like a really powerful tool that that writing offers.
For sure. I've read some other people's essays about topics kind of obscure, like gliding during a hailstorm, but parts of it related to my own life. So I was like, yeah, I've been there, except in a slightly different situation.
I was going to say I enjoyed reading it and looking at the detail you put in throughout the entire process of what you were thinking and feeling when you went to take off, when the hail started, when you cleared the hail, and then when you disconnected and were coming in for your landing. What exactly was what you were feeling going through that process, seeing the plane and glider still on the runway and trying to figure out what to do with still trying to land.
And then to continue speaking on those details, I love this the second last paragraph. You know what? I want to hear it in your voice, though. Lindy, would you mind reading this paragraph aloud for us?
Sure thing. I still have a t-shirt with signatures from everyone I learned to fly gliders with, filled with statements like, keep flying, reach for the stars, you're awesome, and from Thorin, thanks for not hitting me.
So immediately, right, and this is a comedic paragraph, but I also feel like I get a strong sense of your voice as I'm reading this, right? Even the other stuff that you're including, you know, because it shows that this is not just a kind of daredevil activity, right? This is an achievement for you, right? And this isn't something you normally just go out and do just for kicks. And I love this last, you know, thanks for not hitting me. That's a great detail to add. And a character to add. I don't feel like that was contrived at all. That fit perfectly with the end of your story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, originally when I wrote it and it was too long, I included that in one of those times, like kind of veering off the runway, one of the other students tried to grab the glider's wing to stop it, but I was going too fast, so he would have like had his head hit. So I did almost hit him, but I tipped the glider this way, so I was going more back towards the runway, and so the wing lifted up and didn't hit his head.
Some high stakes activities right there. Amazing. Are there other comments that we'd like to make regarding Lindy's piece?
I thought I agree with everyone as they've been saying. Like your descriptions were very like vivid, and I really appreciate it because I'm like a visual kind of like person. I like thinking about what I'm reading and like seeing like a picture, kind of like a movie kind of like thing. And I really like that you kept like a upbeat kind of like attitude throughout the whole story, even though you're kind of scared at the beginning. It just all turned out well, and yeah, I just really loved your story.
Thank you.
For sure. Now I want to end on one closing question, if we may. So this final line, Lindy, could you read that out loud for us, please?
Absolutely. My dreams changed, and although I still love flying in the sky, it hasn't been my priority. I haven't flown a glider since.
So this was a very unexpected ending for me. I was expecting some kind of like, and now I go out and fly all the time, or I have all these friends, and like I think about that. But you didn't go back to do it again. I'm very curious as this ending. So where did you leave it with flying? Where are you at right now?
Well, right now I'm not actively flying any manned aircraft. I fly a lot of drones and do aerial mapping or like videos, photos with that, and kind of teach students around Alaska how to do that. And that's been a really cool job. But flying gliders or airplanes turns out to be, you know, it's a lot of time and a lot of money to invest, while I'm also like trying to study engineering and get that career going. So my thought process right now is that since I want to keep flying more as like a hobby and not go into commercial aviation, I should focus on my engineering career, and then once I'm going with that, I can take up flying again.
Excellent. Any other comments, questions? Great. Well, hopefully I speak for all of us when I say, Lindy, it was a real pleasure to read your story. I'm glad that this is the direction you chose, and it was interesting hearing about your process. Back to screen share. This goes back up here. All right, so one more time, thanks so much, Lindy, for sharing with us. And now we're going to jump into our second piece. Now, and the author's note, we are not going to break down for right now. We're gonna jump ahead. So Jonathan, before we jump into your piece, I gotta say, man, this one really stuck out to me and hit me pretty deep. And I don't want to say too much more than that before we go into your process. But anyways, this piece really spoke to me. So Jonathan, I'm curious, how did you decide to come to this piece? There's so much that you could have written about, so much you could have talked about. Why'd you land on this?
Oh, there's so many things I went through to figure out what I was going to write about. As I put in a comment on Slack, I was actually headed in a completely different direction because I was originally going to write about my decision after high school about joining the Marine Corps and what led me to it and what exactly I expected of it. But as I started to write, it kind of just morphed into my entire high school experience because I realized it was a little more meaningful as far as how I came about making my life what it is today is this decision, and it had a pretty good impact. So I was all over the place until I actually started writing. I finished with the entire first paragraph, and it led me in a completely different direction. And so it was kind of just spur of the moment where I went with it.
Awesome. And a lot of times the best stories are like that. Now, man, there's so much that I want to ask you, and I do not want to dominate the entire conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this piece along to our other guests right now. And do we have any comments about Jonathan's piece? What are we thinking?
I personally,
Go for it.
You can go, it's okay.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think the opening paragraph, very different from the other ones I've read, asking a lot of questions. And I think that can be a risky thing, but I think Jonathan's pulling it off, right? Because the question of the entire assignment is like, what's a choice that you made? And right away, where am I going? We're immediately engaged in that question. So it's not only the writer that's trying to figure it out, but you're now drawing the reader into that conversation as well, right? So it's like a very interesting way for the reader to be invested in your choice and to think, okay, like what happened? What's the situation? And then as we get to read, we get to see. I think that's a really smart technique that's being employed here.
I agree. I think the opening with questions really drew me in and also made me think about my last year of high school, which was last year, and how I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do. So as I read through your story, it was like reading through mine at the same time, but with more perspectives, which was super cool.
I also really appreciated how you were willing to be so open with your writing and talking about a very vulnerable time in your life, and how as fresh out of high school, so many things influenced you, and then it brought you to where you are today, and seems like you're doing pretty well with where you're at today, and I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
So yeah, when I look at this first paragraph, one word stands out to me, and that word is risk. This was a risky first paragraph, right? And even as I was reading it, I was saying, all right, where are we going here? But here's the thing. It works, right? Because all these questions you do seek to answer in the piece, and I actually am interested. And then we jump right into, okay, now we've got narrative, right? So we start with all these questions, we jump into the narrative, and for your intents and purposes, I think that you pulled it off. So that's great. Lindy touched on another word that I have also written down and circled on my page, which is perspective. It's really interesting to see your thought process through this piece as you grow older changing. I really felt like the 17-year-old kid at the beginning of the story, all the way to the older now man, right, who's held jobs and has his own family, and I felt that at the end. So that I was impressed by. So before we jump into the deep breakdown, are there any other comments? Great, so let's keep scrolling. If you see something that jumps out to you, please interrupt me. But there's a couple things.
I like the line that was and about the sports and how you'd been in so many, and like track was to run towards your dreams. I feel like that line was super cool, and it might be kind of like because I liked running too in high school, or it might just in general be an amazing line, but I think that was a great choice there.
Yeah, I tried having that in series of sports and what exactly they felt towards me, kind of go over the year, go along with my piece and my decisions coming from the beginning of my senior year to the end of my senior year, and how it kind of like gave depth or an image to it, kind of where I went.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan, can I have you read this highlighted section aloud?
Absolutely. I've been in sports all of high school, cross country in the fall to run from disappointment, wrestling in the winter to fight the darkness around me, and track in the spring to run towards my dreams. I played in band to relieve stress and show commitment towards my decision, and after school clubs like FCA so that I might surround myself with encouragement. Classes for me were either a place for me to sleep or a place for me to do the extraordinary.
I mean, that's a line right there, man. You know, you've got and here's what I have written down, right? So you got the interesting distinction between winter and spring, right? So cross country and track seem kind of similar to me, but the way that you're describing them are very different, right? And so you've got the cross country, you're running from this disappointment. The wrestling, you're in the winter, right? You're fighting the darkness. And then spring, now you're running towards your dreams. It's sort of, you know, the metaphorical rebirth. That was extremely well done. I'm not sure exactly how aware of it you were, but that's how you do it right there. And I believe that you were aware of that. And then finally, to kind of expound upon this duality you've got going, classes for me were either a place to sleep or a place to do the extraordinary. And I love that there's no in between there, right? Like it's going to be one or the other. You don't know what it's going to be, but like depending on where you are at in your head, that's what it's going to be. I thought that was a really well done paragraph. I'm going to keep scrolling, and y'all tell me to stop if you want to say something. Oh man, okay. This is taking me into some questions that I've got. First of all, I wanna lead in with a joke. So, did you guys know that running was the second sport ever invented? Do y'all know what the first sport was? Jenna, do you know what the first sport ever invented was?
No.
Wrestling, because those who couldn't wrestle ran away.
I think I actually have heard of that.
Right. So that's the joke that's the first joke I ever remember hearing. My dad used to say it to me all the time when I was growing up, because we're a family of wrestlers. And the joke was, you know, you'll either learn how to wrestle or you learn how to run away. Anyways, I love talking with wrestlers. It's a different breed. All right, so now we're gonna kind of get into it, and I have this highlighted right here. The "she hated men" line. Now you are amongst a family, and I'd like to ask your siblings, are they all the same gender as you? Is that
No, so I've got my older half brother, which is the one who never really stayed long with us. My older sister, me, and then my twin sister, who's a minute younger.
Okay, sounds good. Now this is a line that I want to hear what you think about it. I'd actually rather not comment on it before you do.
So and why she hated men point, I put in there to really go along with the previous sentences, I guess. But throughout my childhood, love consists of beatings of points, words of doubt, shows of favoritism, and points of exclusion. Because it didn't really have any reason in there as to why those happened to me, why I was like on the receiving end of that. So when I put out my sibling list, I kind of ended it with my mother was very adamant about who her favorites were and why she hated men, to show that it was me being a man, her son, as to why these things were happening, because she loved and favored my sisters more than me. I was on the back burner when it came to being taken care of, and like getting to go do things, spending time with other family and stuff like that. So
I
In
think
this line, oh, go for it, Kate.
I was just gonna say, I think, and like the way you achieve that with the word choice, I think if we're talking about sort of like the technical aspects of writing, the word choice, beatings, like beatings of points, but like that word is so like stark and powerful. Hated, exclusion, like these are powerful words, and when we, they're important when we're writing something to say like, what words do I need to use to convey my tone, right? And that's something that is important to consider. And I think, Jonathan, I think you did that here, and I think it's working to tremendous effect, because it's creating a tone of like animosity and really feeling like the power of the moment. So I think that's really well done.
For sure. Now, as we go back, this line is also connecting me to some decisions that you made. And there's one line in particular that I would love to have you read aloud. But first, I want to, you know what, we're going to do that first, because, I mean, this is just, I mean, this is it right here. Could you read that aloud for us, Jonathan?
I finally realized that the people surrounding me were not my forever. I was my forever.
I mean, that's a mic drop moment if there is one, right? I mean, this is such a powerful lesson, and some that so many people learn very late in life, right? Long after they wish they had learned it. And this is something for me that really stands out, right? This is such an important detail, you gotta learn to be okay with yourself. And especially for a lot of young men right now in society, we're having a lot of trouble with that. We're seeing a lot of difficulty with that. And so this kind of connects me to some of the conclusions you make later. I'm going to jump into a super quick anecdote about one of my friends, Miles from back home. Miles grew up without a dad, and he had a very strong mother who was helping him out, right? But as he grew up, he loved superheroes, right? Because he didn't really have that male figure in his life that kind of, he could replicate himself after. And his entire life, he worked out all the time. He read all these books. He loved comic books, right? And eventually he graduates high school, tries to go to college, doesn't like it because he wants to be a superhero, and he joins the Coast Guard, right? He joins the military. And Miles, just a year ago, graduated from A school. He is now a helicopter diver. So if there are people that are stranded in the ocean, or you know how like the ship flipped over in the Gulf Bay last year, and the helicopter comes and they cut it open and the people go in to rescue everybody, that's what he does now. And so for him, even though he didn't have that figure in his life to look towards, he had to figure out what it meant for him to be a man, right? And that's kind of what I see you doing in this piece. What does it mean for you to be a man? And I see lines like, I finally realized that I was my forever. I could direct my life. I could produce my future, right? And then this drives you into this paragraph, right? And you're talking about this like superhero gleam, like you still want to help people. No matter how you were treated or how you felt excluded, these are still your goals. I thought that was a really amazing showing. And Jonathan, I would love to have you read this last line for us and tell us a little bit about what you were thinking as you ended this piece.
I sought to be the sun shining through the clouds on a stormy mid-September day so that others might never have to experience what I went through. So I kind of wanted to end it on a more positive note, like even though the mood was kind of dark and damp in the beginning and throughout it, I kind of wanted to show that even though I went through what I did, like I'm not letting it hold me back. I'm looking to brighter days. I'm looking to be better and stronger and helpful, so I can be there for others instead of getting caught in my own memories and just being down and gloom all the time. Like I don't I don't want that to be who I am, and I don't want others to feel like they're stuck in that kind of rut too.
Right. And now this other line makes me wonder too. So because of my past, I wanted my future to be different. Because everybody wanted me to fail, I wanted everyone to succeed. Now I like that duality again. Is this something that you still feel, or do you feel now that you are surrounded by different kinds of people, or at least a different attitude?
Oh, absolutely. All three things, honestly. Like I have a much better attitude than I did when I was going through high school. I've changed drastically, and honestly, I couldn't be more proud of myself. But with that attitude, I surround myself with better people, more like-minded people I want to constantly be around, who make me happy, who I can make them happy. And that leads to me still wanting to make sure that I can help the people around me, whether it's small little day-to-day tasks or long-term goals that I can have some sort of handle in. Like, I want to be there to help anyone and everyone. I love helping people, and I really want to make sure that's kind of my cornerstone of life, is that I'm a good and helpful and just strong and there for them.
Some amazing life lessons in there. And do we have any other comments from the guests?
Well, I think about like the idea of choice, right? And like who we choose to surround ourselves with. And I think that's part of what your story is grappling with, of like, how do I create a culture around me that is positive, and recognizing that that is a choice. I mean, it's not necessarily a choice when we're, growing up and going through high school, but after that, it does become a choice for many of us. And so like recognizing that agency it's really cool to see this story doing it. And I think it's definitely something that, a lot of people benefit from reading.
Yeah, I really like the flow of your story and like how you artfully crafted it. And overall, like, my impression is like amazing story, and it's super cool that you were able to like go back and remember like your past and how it's related to your future. And I think that's powerful.
I really enjoyed how, like, I'm a sucker for like happier ending, because like, not gonna lie, it seemed like you could tell from like the tone of the beginning that you were really like upset from where you were at, but I really like how you were able to like have like a lot of like internal strength to like turn your life around for the better. And I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, just as a closing, Jonathan, really happy that you were willing to share this with all of us. A lot of the time as writers, it can be difficult to share the things that are most pressing against our minds, but this, in my opinion, is the best way to get it out. And I really got a lot out of reading this. So, thank you so much. I think I'm happy to leave it there. Do we have any other comments? Amazing. And last but not least, we're going to skip over the author's note for now. Oh, we can't, because there's a line in here that I love. Jonathan, could you please read the last line of your author's note for us?
I'm unsure how to the point this writing is, but I hope it can convey a little piece of my heart.
I mean, come on, guys. All right, had to pause there for a second. I don't need to comment on it. Okay, we're going to keep moving. And we come into Jenna's piece. And Jenna, I have a lot written down, but I would like to start with you first. And can you please tell us a little bit about your process and what you were thinking as you started writing?
Well, when I was thinking about the prompt, I kind of interpreted it as like, what kind of like challenge was I faced with, and like what was the outcome. And so instantly I felt like the most interesting challenge I could elaborate on would be like my first breakup, and how untimely it was, like coming right before, like literally the day before my regional tournament senior year for volleyball. I was like, literally, have some sort of decency, will ya? Like, come on, I have a big weekend ahead, buddy. And then 2 weekends later, I have possibly state. So like, Priorities. But I think it was good, looking back now, that he did break up with me when he did, because we both weren't happy, and just like continuing that like cycle of like pretending everything's okay when we weren't willing to communicate was better that he cut it off sooner instead of like later, because that probably would have affected me, I don't know, in ways that I couldn't even begin to fathom for like my regionals impossible state. Yeah, that's pretty much what made me choose it.
Amazing. Now, what else would we like to say just around the group from the guests as you're taking a second look at the story? What's coming to mind?
I think for me, what I kind of started wondering was like, wow, you've like created an amazing community within your volleyball team, and obviously seem passionate about the sport. And I was kind of wondering, how'd you start with volleyball?
So I was lucky that in my schooling system, I went to Monroe, which has not only just like a high school and middle school like together, but also has an elementary side that's attached to it in the same really small building. Now you think about, that's literally pre-K through 12th grade. So in 6th grade, they had the opportunity for us to swing up from 6th grade to play on the middle school team. And I didn't take that opportunity, but that's what originally started my interest. I was like, wow, I really could have done that. And so then I like play a little bit with my sister and stuff like that in the summer until my next middle school season of 7th grade and 8th grade. And from there, that's where I was brought into the program by my amazing coach, Obermeyer. He kept me in the program, introduced me to a lot of new people and places and opportunities. Like my 8th grade year, I was introduced to my position, the libero, which is like in volleyball team, you know, like everyone wearing the same jersey. And then there's that one person that doesn't, and that's me. And as my favorite character in a TV show says, that's also libero, like, I'm the star. And I just love that in 8th grade so much. And from there, when I made it to high school, it was just amazing coaches that kept me there and kept playing my game, and captain opportunities, and finally being able to be starting lineup senior year in varsity with my best friends. And yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
I have a question too. The third paragraph, you talk about sort of like the support from your family and friends, but then also your teammates. And it's such an interesting moment because in the first paragraph, you know, you start with like, okay, the last year's, the culture of within the team was pretty toxic, and like that's something we're trying to fix this year. And then we get to sort of like, it's almost the end of your season and it feels like, oh, it is fixed. Like they're coming and they're supporting you. Was that something that surprised you? Or was that like, were you guys close like that already?
I probably should have made the point in my story that the season prior, so like my junior year season and before, the toxic environment was due to a lot of really bad upperclassmen that, you know, we don't like seniors that bully me. We don't like seniors that fight with other underclassmen. We don't like seniors that are always looking to pick fights with each other to bring the team down and literally get the team kicked out of the gym and go home early. Like the environment was so bad, and that's why I was really worried about like, would I even be able to handle varsity? But considering how this year, or my senior year, when my best friends, Captain Chloe, I didn't mention her name in there, there's another outside, Madeline, like they were like my really good friends, and having them also go through that same experience kind of made it want the change to start with us, especially with the group of underclassmen that were swinging up to varsity all those years. They wanted to see a change too. And so I think I was kind of surprised that like, not by the fact that the team culture was so much better, and I was just more surprised in the fact that I recognized it a little bit later than I should have, because looking back, they definitely were there for me through like a lot of things, whether it be like other like trouble in paradise times, they were there for me, or like college application times, my team was being super supportive and helpful.
That's really cool. That it's like this assignment correlates to the story of us idea so well too. Especially the idea of like, you know, being the change within your community, you know, like being the change you want to see, and like, okay, this culture wasn't good. How can we make it better so that when other people join it, it's positive, right? And it's a choice, and it's also like a community and a communal choice. And that's really cool to see that operating here.
Great. So I would like to jump back up to the top. The teammanship cure. Love the title, right? This is your own word that your team uses that you know. And yeah, we can predict what it means, but I love the idea that you use this and that makes the story more personal. So this is what stood out to me. This is such a universal story. I felt like this story could take place anywhere in the United States, at any high school. Not only that, but it would be filmed for some kind of high school type movie, right? And
That's
guys,
exactly what I thought in my head. I was like, this sounds like a Disney Channel movie happening a little bit.
yeah, oh yeah, it does. Give me just a moment while I try desperately to get people to stop blowing me up on Slack.
It might honestly be me. I'll exit out of my Slack real quick.
No, you're good. It is me, but that's all right. So, okay, jumping right back into it. Yeah, so this story really could happen anywhere, right? It could happen in any high school across the country. I felt it playing out, right? Like I'm picturing these lockers and a couple details. Like I'm picturing you going through all this stuff in your head, right? But I'm also picturing you actually doing that in the building, and the lockers are around you, and the people are going by, but then the camera is just on you, and the people are going in front and behind, but it's like slowly zooming in on you, trying to figure out what you're going to do with your decision, right? So this is a kind of movie that I got to say is a guilty pleasure of mine. I love these kinds of movies, right? They're happy, they're fun. You know, you get into them, you sit down with your popcorn, you like snuggle up with your best friends. And I'm not afraid to admit that I do that still sometimes. You just watch a good old-fashioned movie. Yep. So I really like this. This felt very universal to me. Let's see. You have your good looking back. I'll never forget, a good line to end on. There's a line that I am trying to find that I would love for you to read aloud. And as I'm looking for that, are there other comments about the piece?
I was going to say that I really love how your team, specifically your captain, was able to recognize that you guys needed some sort of reform, and that you guys were able to make that happen your senior year, going from just the toxicity of your past to being able to stick with this whole teammanship idea and working together and actually getting to go to regionals and make sure that you guys were doing the best you possibly could, which allowed you to get over the fact that this random guy decided he wanted to break up with you before a really important time. And so I thought it was good that you guys were able to manage and hold this together, still in high school, realizing that this was a problem and that you guys could take care of it personally.
Thank you.
And what Jonathan is talking about too alludes as well to your narrative arc, right? We've got, here's the beginning, right? Here's the place we're at the beginning. We got our toxic team, which kind of represents our toxic relationship that we don't realize we're in yet. And then we have the fated day, right? Things are bad, like things feel like they're being lost. They feel like they're being broken apart. And then we have this like lowest moment, right? We're down in the cave now, and we don't even know if we're going to compete, and we're feeling broken and defeated, you know, but we're going to come out of the cave and we're going to do our best. And now we're ready to bestow our boons upon our fellow teammates as we come out and help achieve the victory, which we know we got to all do together. And by the end,
that serve, but Jillian Fleming saving that, the ball going out. However, Monroe getting that point, making it 14-15. Monroe.
Your team is a team, right? And that all comes back to teammanship. I thought the narrative arc, you know, was really great. Now, I would love to have you read this line aloud for us, please.
All right. All of this kept going on until the fated day before regionals. That day after school, my boyfriend asked to speak with me once I was done with the teacher meeting. Within those next few minutes, I was extremely nervous as I felt that something bad was going to happen. My spidey senses were right. He dumped me on the night right before my possibly last volleyball tournament.
And I love that even as you're reading that out loud, your voice changed, because this is where I first realized that you were hilarious. And I had not known that before I read this sentence. And then I said, oh, all right, like here we go. This is now a comedy for me, right? And of course, sometimes you have the most emotional, dramatic moments within a comedy, right? Mm-hmm. But this really turned the piece for me. And then if you could please read this line as well for us.
One of my favorite lines. After a night of endless crying and Lewis Capaldi on repeat, I came to the decision that I should go to school so I could play at regionals.
Right. And so right here, you're coming out of the cave, right? You're saying that, you know, I'm a warrior, I'm going to keep going. And also another, you know, in my opinion, very well designed joke.
Thank you.
I like the conversational tone you were able to integrate between your more serious parts and then your humor and stuff. Seeing the next few words, not gonna lie, it hurt to see my ex at school. Being very direct, just like you're talking to a friend here.
Thank you.
Amazing. Any other comments as we come to the end of the piece?
I wanted to say that I enjoyed reading the first sentence you read aloud about your spidey senses, because a lot of times when writers put things like that in, the person grading or some of the audience can't really understand where you're coming from or what exactly you're talking about or where that reference is from. And it really feels good that when you put a reference in that people understand and they feel it. Because sometimes you're just like, wow, that was hilarious. It was gold. I put that in there. It was the best thing ever. And then people are just like, why is this here? What is this even? I don't get it. And you're just heartbroken because it's hilarious. It's gold. Everyone should understand this. It's A1. And I enjoyed reading that because it gives a little personal inspected as far as who you are and some of the things you like. So.
Thank you. And funny story about the spidey senses, that's I had one of my teammates, the captain, actually, she goes to UAF too, and so I had her read over my story. She's like, oh, the spidey senses, that's your move, because the libero plays the primary person in the back row, and my little move is I'm on the end line, and then boom, I twist and stuff like that so the ball can go out, and I literally have the perfect video of my spidey senses on tape, and I'll show it later.
Amazing. Other comments? Great. I think that's a good place to leave the commentary. But Jenna, it looks like there was a lot you were trying to accomplish with this piece, and from our perspective, it seems like you were successful. But I'm curious, how do you feel about these events and how you spoke about them now that you've written the piece?
I take a lot of pride in the regional win with my team, and I'm very happy that they were able to support me and get it through it. But I think also it'd be a little bit more real and stuff like that. The breakup still hurts, but thank God I got college stressors to get my mind off that, because I don't have time for that now with college. But yeah, it's going back, this is definitely one of my favorite high school memories, and I'm very glad it happened with the team I love and trust.
Well, on that word trust, I think that's a really great way to end our exercise. So, quick recap, just for all of our listeners back at home. These are some students who have been doing a really great job interacting on the hub. I should say writers, not students. These are some writers that have been doing a great job interacting on the hub. We really got a lot out of their stories. And as you can see, these stories were all taken in different directions, and yet all of them were able to achieve something that, in our opinion, was really great. So we wanted to share them with you. So to our guests, thank you so much for coming on. And of course, to our Wizard of Technique, Cade, thank you for coming on as well. Ranger Dale, wherever you are, thank you so much for lending your spirit to this Hubcast. And do we have any final comments? I'd love to go through each of our guests right now and get some final words, comments, some wisdom, and see what you guys are thinking before we leave. So if y'all don't mind, we're gonna go in the same order. And Ranger Cade, the Wizard of Technique, is there anything else you'd like to end on?
Yeah, I would just say I think such an important exercise is reading each other's work and like seeing what other people do effectively, right? Because we can learn how to write, through reading what other people do successfully or not successfully, right? So I would say, make this a practice to, when you're reading somebody else's work, to think about sort of the elements that they're using and how that can help you when you're doing your assignments and your writing in the future.
Definitely agree with that. And I think it was really cool here too to be able to come on and talk with you guys to see not just what you wrote, but what was going through your mind as you went at it. So I thought it was fun. Really appreciate coming on.
I just want to say I didn't really have a process. Kind of just sat down and went at it and threw out what I did. But as I was writing, I was in the mindset that this is a little risky, not just in the way I was writing, but like how much I was divulging. But I mean, I did what I did. My past is my past. Nothing's going to change. So like, I might as well tell people about it. Like, I'm going to be as truthful and honest as I can. So I just went for it.
I'd like to say that like this is honestly like a really fun assignment, and especially if you like take this writing opportunity as like an outlet to like talk about something that's been on your mind or talk about something that's really important to you, and you'd be surprised like how much more you like learn about yourself, which ties into the next lesson, which is like the values and stuff like that. And yeah, also take this opportunity to again like interact with like your other writers, and you'll be surprised the friends you can make and like learning to better your own writing techniques.
Ranger Cade, Lindy, Jonathan, Jenna, Ranger Dale, and I'm your host, Aaron. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
All right. Hi, guys. It's Ranger KJ here today with Ranger Sarah and Ranger Jane. We are going to talk a bit about our last assignment, the story of us, and kind of how we decided to do it and why we decided to do it the way we did. Ranger Sarah, Ranger Jane, you'd like to introduce yourselves real quick?
Yeah, it's a Friday afternoon. It's overcast. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ranger Jane. I was on last week's Hubcast, so you may recognize me from there.
All right. So
And I'm a faithful listener.
The biggest fan, Sarah's family.
Pretty much.
The story of us assignment looked very different like 1 week ago. Like a very, very completely different assignment, more or less. And we kind of changed kind of radically this week. And I want to talk about why a bit. So like a big part of the change was this introduction of this idea of values. That wasn't a word that appeared anywhere in the assignment beforehand. So kind of what made us connect values to this assignment? Like what was the thought process behind that decision?
Sure. So as you know, this is a very special time for you in two ways. One, you're just starting college, and two, there's the coronavirus epidemic. And during this time, especially, both times you would need to be evaluating your values to see if you're leading the life that you want to be leading. So we all have values, our core values within us, and they are a driving force in life. And we don't always know what they are because nobody ever tells us to identify them. So sometimes we lead life and we realize that we're frustrated or angry. And a lot of times that's because we're not living our life according to our values. So identifying our values helps us lead life in a more fulfilling way than we would have been before. And especially at the start of college, you're thinking about a lot of things. You're thinking about your career path, your learning style, what friendships you're going to make, what communities or groups you want to be a part of. And knowing what your values are helps you choose things that align with your values. So a career that would be fulfilling for your values, a learning style that would fulfill your values. So if one of your values is curiosity, then you know that you want to do something less prescriptive. You want to go to less lectures. You want to do something more hands-on with workshops. So if you're also choosing friendships because you're just starting school. And now I know it's kind of hard because with coronavirus, you can't really see people in person. But what we're offering in this class is a group of, 220 students that are all potential friends, and 10 Rangers that are all potential friends. So by looking at our values and looking at each other's values, you can start to make friendships like that. And you could start to have a community online that hopefully later can be an in-person community as well.
Wow, can we change our names from Ranger to potential friends?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that answer, Jane. I guess what about it was the story of us, like the concept of the story of us, like even just going off the name. What about it felt like it was important to have the values? Was it this kind of community forming idea, or was it something else?
Yeah, it was to help form a community and to also learn more about ourselves so that we can make better choices and more fulfilling choices for ourselves for the future.
I think for me, the process of undergoing quite a bit of revision on the assignment that had been taught in previous years and had every time it's taught, there's a different iteration. But I would say this time it's a completely different assignment. And I'm really excited about it, like very excited about it, because what I think happened through like a lot of the work and the discussion and the thinking and the hard work that people put in to stay, no, that's not what I want. That's still not it. That's still not it. Was this, I don't know, I guess I'm seeing an iceberg in my mind, and there's like all this stuff underneath the iceberg. And some of the stuff that was underneath the iceberg of the original Story of Us assignment was a discussion of values, and that doing the kind of internal analysis of where your values come from. And that's connected, again, to the story of choice, the idea of a challenge, a choice, and an outcome, that what's driving those stories are values. But that can stay underneath the surface, that we don't often take the time to name them or understand what values we're living our life with. I think that can be incredibly empowering to name them. And I think we've created a exciting critical thinking process with this week's assignment, where we're basically saying, hey, do this reading, do this thinking, discover this. And then we're saying, write something cool, enact it in some way. And I think we're getting a little bit of question about that because it's outside what maybe people are asked to do. But I know for me, I can put this in terms of a value, but I'm thinking more in terms of an emotion. But I was so grateful to read a writer who shared that they enjoyed writing it, because for exactly the reasons that Ranger Jane said, that it's during a really challenging time. It's a time of transition, but it's also a time of transition for the entire world. And that might make you feel like not as important. And of course, everybody is important. We all matter. So I think we made an assignment that reminds people of that, and that makes me incredibly happy.
I think what's also really unique about this assignment is that kind of asked for sort of intentional community building, which I don't think people tend to do, kind of community building with like that pure intention of building a community. Do you guys think it's like more important like right now because of the way the world is for that kind of intentionality?
Yeah, and I also think it's a lot more freeing because if this had been in person, you'd be limited. You might have only 20 people in your class, but because you're online and you're kind of on your own, you have a lot of time to think and you have a lot more people to interact with. So I think it's even easier, or there's a lot more opportunities to build community now because everything is online. You don't have to be there in person. You're not limited to only the people that you run into in person. And I think that's really freeing. And I think this is a great time to really think about if your communities are the ones that you want to be a part of, and to find ones that really make sense for you and your values.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I'm just so drawn to the student identity always. And I mean, I try to occupy it myself in my life. But I think when you're like a actual student, like you're in a degree program, or you're maybe taking classes. You don't have to be in a degree program, I guess. But when you say yes to the student identity, you are saying yes to becoming a not yet person, a person that is open to learning and trying something out. And when you're able to meet people of like minds that are also students, but then you can further kind of, what's the word? I'm thinking of a word that I don't have in my head. I guess when you're able to focus it to multiplicity, to realize, okay, we're all students, we all share this thing, we have this common ground, and now we can actually go in more particular ways based on these things. Like, I feel like that's what's exciting about offering the hub for all of us, is to see where we go. And I'm already kind of noticing on Slack, like there's some, I want it to be a global community, where we all share this, and like, this is what's good for humanity. And I definitely feel that too. But I also like when it might become more specific or more particular. And that's when I think collaboration can really take off and people can start to feel like they can solve problems, or at least ask questions in ways that help them solve problems when the timing is right.
I guess you kind of covered my next question, but is that kind of why you think it's so essential to have this kind of community-focused approach within a writing class?
I definitely believe that learning happens through relationships, and I think community is a really good word. It's definitely a value of mine, so I'll just put that out there. But that if you're kind of noticing, like, is this community, where did community falter? Like, was it present today? Is it absent? Because I think that's what values for me do, is that it's not like, okay, I have my community value, so now no one can take it away from me. It's something that you have to work at, and something that you have to, it's your lens, I guess. So to get back to writing, I think, I'm in a national network called Community Writing. So I think in that way, it can become really literal. Like, community writing is social change, using writing to bring about change in the world for social justice. But it can also mean that you're writing, grants pretty literally. Pretty literally, I don't mean that. You can cut that out, KJ. It means that you're using writing, you're using text to communicate in such a way that there's actually something that happens as a result of the writing. But then there's also this idea of community that comes from like creative groups of people coming together and, sharing food and sharing ideas and supporting each other, and that can create like great art and also just great life. And then there's the challenge of when communities come together to support each other, like during the pandemic and things like that. So it's like all these aspects of community. I don't really want to answer your question. I just think it's a great one. Like, what is community writing? What's the relationship between community and writing? What do you think, Jane?
So I was going to bring up the community of Rangers that kind of happened this year. So I'll just tell you a little bit about us. There's 10 of us, and we're all very, very different, and we all have very, very different values. So each of these assignments that you get are not just pulled out of the air. We spend days arguing about them, and you can really hear our values in what we say. So Ranger Sarah's values community, and she always says, how does this build community? How is this adding to our community? Another value of mine could be introspection, because I always ask, what are they learning about themselves? What are they getting out of this? Are they growing as people? Another value from our group could be one of our Rangers really wants things to be very practical. So he always asks, how can this be applied in the business world? How can this help them get a job? How can this help them there? Another Ranger is very academic focused. So he's always asking, how can this help them in future classes? Will they be prepared for the next class? Another Ranger is focused on creativity. So they're always asking, is this helping them express themselves? Is this helping the students figure out a different way to communicate? So that's why your assignments are so convoluted, and there's a lot of aspects, because you have 10 Rangers trying to put in their 10 values or 10 sets of values and all coming at each other wanting really badly good things for you for each assignment. So that's an example of our community of differing values coming together to form something, and we do that every week for another assignment.
And I mean, that's because we all have the value of writing. Like,
Yes.
writing does so much. Writing does all the things that you just described. Like, it's such an important activity and product and identity and all this. KJ, what's your values for writing?
My values for writing. I like writing that, I think I saw this a lot in the author's note actually, but I do like writing as a form of healing. I like writing as a way of coping with things that you can't otherwise cope with.
Cool.
Okay, one last question and then I'll let you guys go. And I'll start by answering this question a bit, is I wanted to ask, besides like what we just discussed, besides values and community forming, what else, if we think there's something else, does this assignment do for our students? Because like for me, I think a really important part of the assignment was that they analyze each other's texts, because I think a lot of students are a little uncomfortable with the idea of analyzing stuff. And so that like that they got the opportunity to do that within this assignment was really important to me, because like, especially because they're doing it in a way they don't usually think of analyzing, but in a way that's also much more real to how you analyze things in the real world. So I guess I wanted to ask you guys if there are other parts of this assignment that...
Yeah, so we have a group of Rangers that put together a writing packet every week so that you have some examples of the work that you want to do as students. But I know that sometimes students looking at our work, there's a certain dissociation where you're saying, no, these are the teachers, these are the TAs, this is their work, I need to do something like it. But this week, when you were looking at each other's work, we saw a lot of feedback from the students that were saying, oh, now I can actually read my work better, or I saw these examples or things that I could use in my work, or I saw an example of something that I'm doing in somebody else's work and I can identify it now and I understand this technique better. So I think that looking at different people's work that you consider on your own playing field is very helpful in that way. And then you're learning about feedback, you're learning about reading your own style of work, and you're learning about reading your peers' work.
Yeah, and I would add to that and say there's also I think it's true that students are writers, and there's text being produced, and those texts are finished. They're not drafts, they have been turned in, and they deserve an audience. And that audience should be reading them and interacting with them in the ways that we interact with any text. And yes, they can drive your like writing development, and that's what Jane said so well. And at the same time, they can serve to develop like a deep interest in meaning making and dialogue with another human. And then, sorry, I'm getting right back to that build community. but I mean, that's like writing can do that. Writing is the means for more discussion and things like that. So it'll be great to read the critical thinking work that's happening underneath the surface of A Story of Us. I'm excited.
All right. Well, thank you guys for agreeing to come and be on the Hubcast. I hope you come back to the Hubcast eventually, maybe not next week, but I hope our students found this valuable. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching the Hubcast. We had a great time making it. We enjoyed talking to the students, and we enjoyed talking to the other Rangers. If you want to be on the Hubcast in future episodes, feel free to reach out to either Ranger Aaron or me, Ranger KJ, and stay tuned for next week. Bye.
Na, 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 na. Ba, na, 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 na.